Hello once again, it's Patriarch, and this will be the Appalachian Trail Thru Hike 2023 Reflections video number 3 from me. I had to break up the segments that I recorded for the last one because they were too long, too many. I wanted to make them a little bit shorter so that the video is shorter to watch. So this will introduce the last several topics that I had recorded earlier. I'm not sure where the break will be, but we're going to find out as soon as I take a pause. Next, I want to talk about things that I got better at and things that I continue to struggle with throughout the course of my hike. I've got a list I'll probably have to refer to here just a little bit, but first of all, the things I got better at, we'll start with those and then we'll end with the other things. I got better at preparing my lunch. I learned that it was easier to get my lunch ready at night, pack it in my Ziploc bags, put it in my belt pack, my fanny pack, and be ready to just take off the next morning when I was breaking camp. That was one of the things I got really good at, and so I finally learned how to make things better. One of the other things was learning how to wipe down the moisture off of my tarp when it had either rained or it was misty or something like that. I found kind of a chamois towel. It wasn't chamois, it wasn't leather or anything, it was a cloth thing, but it was like a camp towel. Somebody had discarded in a hiker box. I picked it up and started using that to wipe down my tarp, and oh my gosh, what a game changer. That thing sucked the water up like crazy. And so I kept using that, and that really helped, especially, it's wet on the trail often, and so wiping down your tarp so you're not carrying extra weight during the day is very helpful. I did get better at breaking camp a little bit faster. There was sort of a minimum amount of time that usually required, 35, 40, 45 minutes is usually what it took me to break down camp. By the time I packed away all my quilts and hammock and tarp and ate breakfast and then got going for the day, made sure I had my water supply taken care of. But I did get better at breaking camp during the course of my hike, which is good. Night hiking is something that I got better at. Not that I wanted to, but it became a matter of necessity, particularly later on in my hike when I was hiking during days when the sun wasn't up quite as much. I ended up doing a significant amount of night hiking. Didn't like it, but it had to be done. I did get pretty good at it. Another thing that I got better at was temperature regulation. As the days got cooler and the temperatures dropped, you would start out being a little bit chilly, and then you would have to warm up. As your body warmed up during the hike, then you needed to regulate the temperature. And so I got good at learning how to regulate temperature, whether it was wearing a buff or buttoning my collar, or wearing a headgear, a hood, jackets, whatever it was that I needed to wear to stay warm to begin with, and then shed those things and begin to regulate the temperature later on. I got pretty good at that. The other thing I got good at doing was asking for help when I needed it, and I did need help on several occasions during the hike. I'll point that out when I talk about changes in gear and clothing. Particularly, I had 3 occasions that I needed to ask for help to repair some tears or some seams that had come loose actually in my pants. And there were other things that I asked for help as well, but I got better at doing that, which is important to do when you're on the trail. Your resources are limited, and the like I said before, the trail community and the people on the trail are just awesome. Totally willing to give you the help that you need. One of the things that I struggled with throughout my hike and never really got a good handle on it was packing too much food. It's often said that you pack your fears, and maybe I was afraid I would run out of food, but I always had extra food. I never did run out of food, but I typically carried too much. And that was something that I'm still working on. Need to learn how to do that. Another thing that I didn't get better at was, or struggled with all the time, was putting on cold, damp clothes every morning when you get up. There were very few occasions when your clothes weren't cold and damp. Those are nice days. But the majority of days you had cold, damp clothes to contend with first thing in the morning, and it was really, really mentally challenging to force yourself to get up, get out of your nice warm quilt, and put on those cold, damp clothes. They dried out in about a half an hour from the inside out as you were moving around doing other things. But then within about a half hour, they were all wet again from sweat or rain or whatever it might have been. But that was a challenge that I never really got good at. I always struggled with that. Another thing I struggled with was getting away early in the morning. I was successful some mornings, but it wasn't consistent. And so I struggled with that, along with, in correlation to that, also getting in earlier in the evening. Because of my speed, I sometimes had to hike longer hours, and so I was usually the last one into camp, wherever it happened to be. So I was hiking, not always in the dark, but toward the end I was, but often into the dark to arrive at camp late. Everybody else was either getting ready for bed or eating or something, and I was just pulling in, getting my stuff set up. One of the things that I struggled with during the entire hike had to do with this YouTube channel. Boy, editing and posting YouTube videos on the trail was really hard. At least for me, it was. And I just fell behind and just could never quite catch up. Ended up having to do a significant portion of them after I finished my hike when I got back home, and then worked on posting those videos after that. So trying to keep up with the YouTube channel was a struggle. I didn't want to give up on it because it was basically my daily journal of where I had been and what I had done, and the chronology of my hike. And I did not want to abandon that because I needed that not just for other people, but mostly for myself. So those are the things that I got better at, and the things that I struggled with during the duration of my hike. Another aspect that I think about often, and I was practicing this actually before I went on the Appalachian Trail, and then I did this every day at every campsite that I was at on the trail as well. And that's that I would put my hand on each tree that I had hung my hammock and tarp on and thank the tree. It might seem kind of odd, but for me it was an expression of gratitude and a recognition of my interdependence on these other living things. Well, granted, some of the trees that I hung my hammock on and thanked were dead, but nevertheless, it was the thought and the action that followed that really demonstrates the quality of character, I think, that it's important, and that's gratitude. And gratitude was really one of those traits that was abundantly prevalent on the trail. Generosity and gratitude. My friend Ron and I recognized that within the first couple of days on the trail. It's just, it permeates the trail, and it became a part of what I did every day in thanking the trees for their support and their protection on the trail. And I just wanted to mention that because I think it's important. It was important to me. Too often we take things for granted. I did not want to take the role that the trees played for me as a hammock camper, a hammocker appreciation kind of a gesture. And so that was one of the things that I want to make sure that I remember to do as I go into the future as well. In terms of hiker accommodations for being off trail, there were a number of options. There were all different kinds of options: hostels, hotels, hiker homes, host homes, you name it. There was an abundance of different options that hikers had, and I wanted to just mention a few that I think were noteworthy, and more detail will be included in the book that I write as well. But the first one that I actually experienced was, I mentioned them before, Chica and Sunsets Hiker Hostel. Chica and Sunsets Hostel there in Franklin, North Carolina. Oh my goodness, what a wonderful couple. They set the bar for the hostels for the remainder of the trip. There were some others that matched or were close to it, but they really, like I said, they set the bar for my expectations of what a hostel could be and should be. So thanks, Chica and Sunset, for your wonderful hospitality. They also kept my pack during the 9 days that I had to come back home, and then I picked it up from them again when I returned to Franklin after that. So super accommodating, just so gracious. The second place that I wanted to mention was a hiker home, the Far Not Fast Hiker Home. Daddy-O, who operates that particular hostel. He also provides shuttle service, and this is in Elizabethton, Tennessee. Daddy-O and his family had hiked most of the trail a few years ago and have a couple of books, and you read the reviews online about it, and it is just, it's amazing. You basically have the whole lower level of the home to yourself. Laundry's down there, 2 triple story bunk beds basically, but the mattresses are awesome. Got a ping pong table and big TV, and just it was super relaxing, and such a gracious host. So Far Not Fast Hiker Home, it's called. The third one that I wanted to mention actually was I got off trail in Shenandoah National Park because I was sick. The only time I was sick the entire hike, 2 days, was in Shenandoah National Park, and I got off at the Country View Motel in Elkton, Virginia, and it was a great place to go. I was able to get the rest that I needed. It was comfortable, it was clean, it was quiet, and so that was a great place. So I didn't stay in motels all that often, but that was one of them. Might have been the first one that I stayed in was that one. But then the next one I've mentioned is the Port Clinton Hotel in Port Clinton, Pennsylvania. It had rained all that day. My son was with me hiking there, and so we got a room. This was like an old-fashioned place. It was a hotel above a bar in there. The food was great. The accommodations were dated, but it was dry, and we didn't get there in time to do laundry and get stuff washed out and dried, so we strung lines across the room and just hung our clothes out in the room to dry during the night. But what a memorable time. The Port Clinton Hotel right there in downtown Port Clinton. Not a big place, but memorable for sure. The next one was the Maine Roadhouse. And oh my gosh, Jen and Jen at the Maine Roadhouse. I don't know that I can say enough about them either. I ended up staying at the Maine Roadhouse probably a total of maybe 4 nights, but before the hike was over. Man, what a place, and an awesome host, a super great facility. It's remodeled sort of a barn house and connecting causeway between the two that they have turned into just a fantastic place for hikers to stay. The Maine Roadhouse, Stratton, Maine. If you're ever there in the vicinity, take advantage of it. Jen and Jen are great. Shaw's Hiker Hostel in Monson. Everybody knows about Shaw's Hiker Hostel up there, but again, just a great place to resupply, to get some rest, meet other hikers. It's the entrance to the 100-mile wilderness. They've got shuttles that'll take you out there, pick you up when you're ready to be picked up before that. But then they also have shuttles to Katahdin as well, and then also resupplies in the 100-mile wilderness, which is something that I used twice and needed desperately. It was great. So Shaw's Hiker Hostel in Monson, Maine was another one. The other motel that I stayed in was Lake Lodging in New York when I was in there. I can't remember the name of the town now. It was named after the lake that it's by, but it's close to where the drive-in theater is at, that hikers sometimes stop at and camp near to watch a movie if they can stay awake. Anyway, that was the story that I heard from the owner of the motel there. That was also a great place. Some light resupply that you had available there. Did my laundry for me, and took me downtown. Just super accommodating at the Lake Lodging there in New York. And the last one was it was a home that was opened up more like a host home. Trail Angel Barbie and her husband Dan in South Kent, Connecticut. And I stayed there one night. That was actually where I celebrated my birthday. My 70th birthday was with Barbie and Dan. And just what a wonderful couple. Just fantastic. They told me about the history of the area. There's some great stories that they had to share. Barbie's got some old antique tools that she'll give you a quiz on and ask you if you can figure out what it was that they may have been used for. I didn't get any of them right, but it was just a great place to be. It looks like the sun's kind of getting on me right now, but anyway, those are kind of the memorable hostels, hotels, motels, host homes, hiker homes that I ran into. There's some others as well, but those came to mind first. So we'll leave it at that, and there'll be more of those listed in the book. When I was hiking the Superior Hiking Trail this September prior to my through hike, I had actually gone up to northern Minnesota and did I think I did 230 miles or 240 miles. It was the old Superior Hiking Trail. I ended at the original southern terminus of that and stopped. I didn't hike through the city of Duluth, but I ran into a hiker there, the trail name of Toothpick. He was from Virginia, and we talked about the kind of terrain and how dissimilar it was to the Appalachian Trail, and he also told me about zeros, and he said, don't ignore 0 days. He said, those are important. Your body's going to need those. Boy, was he right. My body needed 0 days. And so I don't have listed here just the single zeros. I've just got some of the double zeros. And there were days when I needed a double zero to really recover. That's 2 days up trail, 3 nights at the facility where you're staying. The first one was in Damascus at Lady Dives. I'd been hiking quite a while without coming off the trail and no zeros. And I needed a break. And it was scheduled to rain that weekend, and so I thought, perfect time to do a double zero. Well ahead of trail days in Damascus. I didn't go back for that, but I was at Lady Dives for a double zero. Fantastic, fantastic place to stay. A great conversation with hikers. Lady Di serves a dynamite breakfast. Oh, man, that one was tough to beat. Her breakfast is just amazing. The second place that I did a double zero that I recall anyway was Uncle Johnny's in Irwin, Tennessee. Mountain Drew was the fellow that was running the show there. Drew, he just went by Drew. Another great place. They had some septic problems the second day I was there, and I think I was the last guy that had access to a shower that Sunday before everything kind of went haywire. But it was a great place to stay, super accommodating. Uncle Johnny's is again one of those landmark or iconic places on the trail that pretty much everybody knows about. But I had a great time at Uncle Johnny's. I just needed to rest and resupply there. The third place that I wanted to mention again was the Elkton, Virginia, where I just mentioned the Country View motel there. I was sick those 2 days. I had a cough that I couldn't shake. Took 2 days totally off the trail. I wasn't totally over it, but I was enough to get back going again, and was never sick again the rest of the time. That was the only time during the entire 230 days of the trail that I was actually off trail because of illness of any kind. The next time was in Harper's Ferry at the Cross Trails Hostel, just north of Harper's Ferry. And I had just come through the roller coaster in Northern Virginia, and it was raining both days that I went through. It was awful. I looked at my feet. They were not in good shape. They were raw. They were bad. I just needed to get off my feet for a couple of days and let them heal up. So I took a double zero at Cross Trails Hostel there in just north of Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. A great place. I was introduced to some interesting characters at that place as well. One of the guys who was managing that also told me that he would be up at Monson's, or not Monson, at Shaw's up at Monson, Maine later that season. And I did see him up there. I was trying to think of his Learning Curve. Learning Curve was the name of the guy that was at Cross Trails, and then also I saw him up in Monson at Shaw's Hiker Hostel up there. The next double zero that I took was actually the 4th of July weekend. I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I have a son that lives in Harrisburg, and so I spent a double zero, 2 days, 3 nights with my son. Celebrated the 4th of July there, and that was fantastic. And that was mostly not so much. Well, I needed the rest too, but it was just to spend time with family that was on the trail, and so that was a great place to do a double zero. The next one that I remember anyway was at Shaw's Hiker Hostel in Stratton, Maine. Met some interesting people there, and my friend Ron also met me there to start the 100-mile wilderness. He hiked for a couple of days with me in the 100-mile wilderness, came back off, and then rejoined me at Katahdin to summit Katahdin. But we stayed together at Shaw's Hiker Hostel, and I guess I was just a single zero. I didn't do a double zero at Shaw's, but it was still a great place. And then Stratton, Maine was the other one at the Maine Roadhouse. I did a couple of double zeros at Stratton, actually, or at least one for sure. But again, Jen and Jen at the Maine Roadhouse were just fantastic. I can't say enough good about that particular place. So do your zeros, take your zeros. Your body will thank you. Even if it takes an extra day to get where you need to go, do it. You'll save all kinds of time and risk of injury in the future if you do that. So take your zeros, folks. The last thing that I want to talk about on this video is disappointments on the trail. The first one really is sort of a categorical thing. I kind of mentioned this before, but it was originally not being able to complete the hike as I had envisioned it initially, to finish the trail linearly, going straight from Springer Mountain up to Katahdin, and doing it without making other alterations. I wasn't able to do that. I had to rethink my plan, my strategy, and timeline. And that was a bit of a disappointment. But interestingly enough, as it turned out, it worked out for the best, especially when you think about the serendipity events that happened as a result of that. And so it was a disappointment, but yet it was overshadowed by the joy that those other events brought to me. So, but I did want to mention that it was originally, you have to move past that mentally and not get too discouraged when those kinds of things happen. And I think that was just important for me to come to a realization that this is something that I just needed to deal with. You just roll with it, kind of like falling down the mountain. You got to roll with it. The other thing that I wanted to make mention of, and I when I mentioned each state has its unique beauty and its unique challenges, I didn't mention that there's probably one state that I probably don't want to visit again because of my experience there, although the people were fantastic. But I was really disappointed in New Hampshire, believe it or not. The scenery, the scenery was great. Franconia Ridge, the Whites, the Presidentials, some of the other places in there. But the trail itself, awful. I mean, maintenance on the trail was zilch, basically. The bog boards hadn't been maintained, I don't know how many years, probably 2 or 3 decades, I would guess, by the looks of them. It was really bad. I kind of think that they ran out of white paint in New Hampshire because you couldn't find a blaze on a tree to save your soul, maybe once every 2 or 3 miles on the trail, it seemed, until you got within maybe a quarter mile of a shelter, and then they were on trees about every 50 feet. Go figure. Anyway, I was really disappointed at the trail in New Hampshire, and I think I mentioned this on a previous video too. It seems like they treat the Appalachian Trail as sort of a distant third cousin that they're ashamed to admit belongs to them. All the trail signage well, basically all of it. There are a couple of exceptions, but it would say Osgood Trail, parentheses, AT. Old Johnson Road, parentheses, AT. Or some other trail name that was a local trail name there in New Hampshire, long-standing thing, and then in parentheses, like, I guess we need to admit that it is the AT and let those folks who are doing the AT know that they're still on the right trail. But it was sometimes hard to know if you were on the right trail, if that was actually the AT trail or not. Thank goodness for Far Out, the navigation app, where you could kind of tell where you were supposed to be, because the signage in New Hampshire wasn't all that helpful. Anyway, that was sort of disappointment, kind of a complaint that I had about the trail in New Hampshire. The people in New Hampshire, fantastic. The hostels in New Hampshire, wonderful. The trail in New Hampshire, no. I don't want to go back. Not to there. Maybe I've heard that in the winter hiking it's better because the snow covers all the rocks. Maybe it's better to hike in the winter in New Hampshire. I don't know. But anyway, that was a disappointment for me. And with that, I think we're going to leave that for the reflections for this video, and we'll save the final ones for the next video. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And if you're thinking about hiking, don't put it off any longer. Don't put it off. Just do it. All right, this is Patriarch pushing on.